Hey friends! Welcome back to my channel. I hope everyone's doing well. I am in Pennsylvania waiting to pick up my load, but I thought that it would be appropriate to talk about the load choice board that Prime has under testing right now, and that will roll out to leased operators. So let me give you some general information. I won't talk about the detail parameters because I'm not sure if those will change, and I don't want to be held to that. But I can tell you what the criteria is right now for the load choice. So again, it's for lease operators, and right now it's not available if you're at any of the terminals. So it sort of has a blackout zone, and that blackout zone is also a mileage radius from the terminal. So if you were at the terminal, you'll have to, like if you're at Springfield, you'll have to go to driver's lineup to get a load out, unless you select a load before getting to the terminal where you're still outside of that blackout zone, so to speak. Depending on the terminal, the mileage radius is different. So currently, the 3 terminals have different mileage radiuses. So I won't say what those are right now because, again, those may change. You've also probably noticed on the Prime app that there's a new section on your home screen for PTA. And the PTA is being used for this load choice. Now, it probably shows up if your company regardless because it's defaulted. But in order to use the load choice and have loads populate for you, it uses your PTA, your projected time of availability, along with your location of when you'll be available to propose loads to you. Some have minimal deadhead, just like any other time, and some have a greater deadhead. But as far as reefer is concerned right now, you're allowed to search for loads so many hours in advance of being available, right? And when you have, and it'll tell you if you have to wait to inquire on loads, like it'll say you're too early, try back in 3 hours or try back in 30 minutes, because it has to be within that parameter. So you can do it so many hours in advance of your PTA, and then you are able to inquire 4 different times. Okay, you have 4 opportunities to choose a load. After that, you have to reach out to your fleet manager. Like you've exhausted your options at that point. When you do get results, you get up to 3 proposed loads at a time. Now, those proposed loads are not just provided to you and you alone. It's for any truck that's in that area around your PTA time or available now, those sorts of things. So once you have a proposed load that pops up, it's sort of a first come, first serve. Whoever jumps on that load and accepts it is the one that sort of wins that load auction, if you will. Now, I was stupid, I'll admit. This was about a week and a half ago, and there was a load. It was 125 miles from PA to a location in New York State. And it was paying $800 some. And I wanted to check the, I wasn't familiar where it was going in New York, so I wanted to check sort of my route. And by the time I got back, somebody else had selected that. Well, of course, 125 miles at $800. Yeah, I should have just took it and bit the route. But so you can lose out on these trips or loads if you don't accept them too soon, or right away. So it's really important for you to know your freight lanes, know what type of freight comes out of certain areas, because where you select that load and where it's going to take you to, so you're 90, you have to figure out, is that a good reload area? Do you think you're going to have to deadhead out? Like, all of those things you should calculate in your head. So start paying attention to that. Like, you know, the loads you've been on, where are your 90s? When you're, you know, picking up at shippers, is it short hauls? Is it long hauls? Is it pretty good pay? What sort of, you know, what sort of reefer temps do you run? Like, what's the product? Because all of that, you know, all of that comes into play, depending on, you know, if it's a drop and hook, if you've had that trailer for 3 days now and you're gonna get that loaded, like, you're responsible for all that fuel. And this should make sense to lease operators, the things that I'm saying. Like, this shouldn't be anything new as far as like keeping your trailer and buying the fuel and that sort of thing. So what happens when you see the load proposed? Well, when you click on it, you'll be able to view the data just like you would if you were in the app. It'll show you the customer, the address, you know, the pickup date, all of that, the address information, the directions. It'll show you any additional stops, your 90 information. The only time that I've had something a little fluky is the weight was incorrect. And one time I saw a rate and I knew that wasn't correct, so I just bypassed that load regardless. So, but it gives you all of the information. And then you have an option to either accept or decline, okay? So if you accept one of the loads that populates on your inquiry page, then you don't have to decline the other ones. You just accept it, and then it becomes your pre-plan, so to speak, if you're already under another load. What about if you don't like the options? Well, that's a gamble, right? If you don't like the options, you can select decline on each of those proposed loads. And then there's a drop-down menu, and it wants to know, why are you declining? You know, do you have insufficient hours? Do you not like the rate? Do you not like the shipper or the receiver? Or, you know, there's just a set drop-down of reasons. If you choose to decline the loads that are offered, then you have to wait so many minutes before you can inquire again. Now, this is where it's a gamble, because if you decline all of those, when you go back to inquire, there may not be anything offered. On the other hand, sometimes the loads are better. So it's really just what you need for your business for the week or the month, where you're sitting with, you know, your settlement. You're gonna have to make those sorts of decisions. So, you know, be keenly aware of where you're at, you know, for revenue, so you can hit your marks. What's my opinion so far? I really like it. You know, I've exhausted all of my options one time, and, you know, my fleet manager had to work with the sales planner in that area to, God, my arms, to get me a load. The other thing that I was dealing with is I did a repower, and when I was under that repower, because it shows up sort of funky for your PTA, I had to work with my fleet manager to get me reloaded or pre-planned while I was under that repower. So, which worked out really well, because I was on another load, and they took me off of that load to do a repower. So the load that I was going to pick up was paying, like, I want to say $965 for like 400 miles. And it was an overnight trip. But what happened was I repowered, so I picked up in Illinois, delivered in Chicago, picked back up in Chicago, delivered to PA. So overnight, I made $2,100 versus the $900. So it worked out for me, but it's not always going to be the case. So This is still under testing right now. I think that for the most part, the parameters, like the general requirements, will stay the same, like blackouts at the terminal. So, it's based on your PTA. It's just if they change sort of the algorithm within those parameters, if that makes any sense. So that's why I don't want to say like you can try to inquire on loads 12 hours before you have your PTA. I don't want to state those things because I don't want to be held to them, because they may change them. But I do really, really like it. I feel like I'm in more control of my business. And it's not to say that I don't have a great partner as a fleet manager. That's not what I'm saying at all. I just feel like if I do well in a week, then it's because I did a lot of planning and forethought. And if I don't do well in that week, well, then I learned from my lessons, because I had to pay for it. You know what I mean? So I am learning a lot. I'm getting a feel for different customers than I used to, meaning when it's supposed to be a drop and hook and that it says that the load is available from 7 in the morning till midnight, I'm paying attention to the customers that are more till the end of their time versus the front end. So because that impacts me. So, but that's the load choice board. I'm really liking it. I'm not sure when they're going to consider the testing is complete, but I do know that the members of the driver advisory board are on it, as well as other select drivers for whatever reason they're on it as well. So it's being tested both from a team perspective and solo, and like I said, I really enjoy it because that's just who I am. I like being sort of in control and sort of being able to be planful about my business numbers, and this helps me do that. So if you are uncomfortable with that, if you're a new lease operator, I would try to do everything you can and study where you're going, what you're hauling, who it's for, are the loads on time, just take all that information in. Just sort of, if you can, file it in your head or write it down, something, because get to know this information, because it's going to benefit you in the end, or it could potentially hurt you if you're not paying attention. This really puts things in your hands, like lease operators have been asking for quite some time. But the old saying goes, you have to be careful what you ask for, right? Because there is no one else to blame if you don't get it right. When you're on the load choice and you have the ability to choose your loads. So I hope you find this helpful as we continue to develop and test. And if there's anything new, I certainly want to share that. Like I said, I don't know when it's rolling out to the fleet. I don't know what the rollout will look like, if it's a phased approach. But I just know that the testing is going well. They're working on the data integrity, because garbage in equals garbage out, right? So if the data is bad being entered into the load information, then what you see is bad information. So like anything else, you have human touch. So there's people make mistakes. So they're working on the data integrity, which I applaud them for, because that's not an easy task in any company, in any role. Data integrity is extremely important. And by data integrity, I mean pickup times, dates, weights, revenue, all of that. That's the data integrity, right? That's the pieces of the pie that you need to make decisions. All right. I'm waiting for the rain to stop so I can go in and take a shower. And probably run the night. I have about 200 miles to a drop and hook at a customer, and right now I'm trying to find a pickup which will allow me to get a washout if needed, after I do my drop and hook and pick up an empty. But you know, I'm up in Pennsylvania and not a lot of places are open overnight, so I have to consider that as well. So I'm looking at fuel and services right now in the area that I'm dropping at to see, you know, what's available for washouts. And you know, because sometimes I don't pick till 7 in the morning. Well, that sort of puts a damper on my 14 if that's the case. But I have a little research to do before I select my load. So everyone be safe. Thank you for watching, and I will be in touch soon.